Islamic bloc holds Israel responsible for Hamas leader's death. Thailand court orders dissolution of main opposition Move Forward party. Good afternoon and Salam Malaysia Madani. I'm Renee Fong and you are watching World Today. Top Muslim diplomats say Israel is fully responsible for the heinous killing of Hamas political leader Ismail Haniyeh in Iran and warned it could destabilize the region. The declaration came at the end of an extraordinary meeting of the Saudi-based Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, called in part by Iran, which has vowed to retaliate for the attack on Haniyeh, setting the West Asia on edge. After foreign ministers gathered at the OIC's headquarters in the Saudi coastal city of Jeddah, the bloc issued a statement saying it holds Israel, the illegal occupying power, fully responsible for the heinous attack, which is described as a serious infringement of Iran's sovereignty. During the opening ceremony, Foreign Minister for current OIC Chair the Gambia, Mamadou Tangara, said Haniyeh's death risked deepening and widening the ongoing bloodshed in West Asia. Tangara said the heinous act serves only to escalate the existing tensions, potentially leading to a wider conflict that could involve the entire region. He added Haniyeh's killing will not quell the Palestinian cause, but rather it amplifies it, underscoring the urgency for justice and human rights for the Palestinian people. The World Health Organization is sending more than 1 million polio vaccines to war-torn Gaza after the virus was detected in the Palestinian territory's wastewater. WHO Chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said health workers need free movement within Gaza to administer the vaccines, saying that a ceasefire or at least a few days of tranquility is essential to protect Gaza's children with routine vaccinations.
WHO is sending more than 1 million polio vaccines to Gaza, which will be administered in the coming weeks. The detection of polio in wastewater in Gaza is a telltale sign that the virus has been circulating in the community, putting unvaccinated children at risk.
Meanwhile, Andrea King from the WHO's Global Health Cluster team said the vaccination campaign would be a huge logistical challenge. She expressed hope that if everything lines up, the vaccines and the associated cold chain supplies will arrive in time for the planned vaccination dates later this month, with the first round to start on 17th August. Most often spread through sewage and contaminated water, poliovirus is highly infectious. United Nations agency said that such vaccine-derived type 2 poliovirus had been detected in the Gaza sewage samples. The European Union, France and the UK condemned a far-right Israeli minister for suggesting it would be justified and moral to starve 2 million Gazans to free scores of captives held in the Palestinian territory. Israel's finance minister Bezalel Smotrich said at a conference earlier this week that no one in the world will allow them to starve 2 million people, even though it might be justified and moral in order to free the hostages. His remarks sparked outrage in the international community, with the European Union saying the deliberate starvation of civilians is a war crime. The EU said it demonstrates his contempt for international law and for basic principles of humanity. The EU also called for access to cover the humanitarian needs of Gazans, including hundreds of thousands of children. France also criticized Smotrich, expressing its deep dismay at the scandalous remarks. It said providing humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza is an obligation under international humanitarian law for Israel, as it controls all access to the territory. UK Foreign Minister David Lammy meanwhile said that there can be no justification for Minister Smotrich's remarks and called on the wider Israeli government to retract and condemned them. Thailand's most popular politician, Peter Limjaroenrat, was banned from politics for 10 years and his party dissolved over his attempts to reform archaic royal defamation law. The Constitutional Court in Bangkok voted unanimously to dissolve the Move Forward Party and ban its executive board, which includes its former leader, Peter Limjaroenrat, for 10 years. The decision comes 6 months after the same court ordered the party to drop its plan to reform a law on royal insults, ruling it was unconstitutional and tantamount to undermining the system of governance with the king as head of state. Peter led the reformist Move Forward Party to a shock first place in a general election last year after striking a chord with young and urban voters with his pledge to reform Thailand's strict royal defamation law. His bid to become Prime Minister was blocked by conservative forces in the Senate. A coalition of army-linked parties took office instead under Prime Minister Srettha Thavisin. The European Union, the United States, the United Nations and human rights groups blasted the court's decision, which the EU said harmed democratic openness in Thailand. Hours after the Constitutional Court ordered its dissolution, the Move Forward Party said its lawmakers would form a new party. During a press conference held shortly after the ruling was delivered, former leader of the party, Peter Limjaroenrat, said he would ensure the political project continues in a new vehicle, which will be introduced on 9th of August.
I have my freedom and my rights to insist on our innocence, that we have no intention of treason or insurrection or trying to separate monarchy from the country of Thailand in any means.
The disbanding of Move Forward Party is the latest setback for Thailand's major political parties, which are embroiled in a two-decade battle for power against a nexus of influential conservatives, old money families, and the royalist military. Even though the dissolution could anger millions of young and urban voters who backed the party and its progressive agenda, the impact of the ruling could be minimal, with only 11 party executives receiving 10-year political bans as a result of the verdict. Of Venezuelan opposition parties have demanded for the National Electoral Council to publish the tallies of the July 28th presidential election. And according to the law, the results should have been published within 48 hours after the election. Simon Calzadilla, representative of Movimiento por Venezuela, along with the representative of two other parties who supported opposition candidate Edmundo González Urrutia, appeared at a hearing after being summoned for what it said was a certification of the results. González Urrutia himself refused to appear at the hearing, saying on social media that if he were to appear at the court, he would be put at risk. Venezuela's Electoral Authority, which the opposition accuses of being biased towards Nicolas Maduro, declared Maduro the winner of the election early on 29 July with around 51% of the vote, but it has yet to produce the voting tallies. The opposition says it has copies of the voting tallies that show it won the election with more than 7 million votes, compared to Maduro's 3.3 million votes. Still ahead, 5 killed in Nepal chopper crash. A helicopter crashed in central Nepal, killing all 5 people aboard, including the pilot and 4 Chinese tourists. The Air Dynasty chopper was heading to Besi, a starting point for many trekking routes popular with tourists, from the capital of Kathmandu. A press release from the Civil Aviation Authority said the chopper lost contact about 3 minutes after taking off and crashed in Nuwakot district north of the capital. Another helicopter was dispatched immediately to the accident site for rescue. Police spokesman Dan Bahadur Karki confirmed all 4 passengers were Chinese nationals, 3 men and 1 woman, while the pilot was a Nepali male. Nuwakot District Officer Ram Krishna Adhikari said all 5 bodies had been retrieved from the accident site. Nepal's air industry has boomed in recent years, carrying goods and people between hard-to-reach areas, as well as foreign trekkers and climbers, but it has been plagued by poor safety due to insufficient training and maintenance, issues compounded by Nepal's mountainous, treacherous geography. Yesterday's incident comes 2 weeks after a plane crash in Kathmandu killed all 18 aboard, except the pilot. Torrential rains and flash floods have left a trail of devastation across western Yemen, with at least 30 people killed and hundreds more displaced from their homes. As of yesterday, damaged roads were littered with overturned vehicles on floodwaters. According to local authorities, the deadly flooding occurred on Tuesday in the provinces of Hodeidah and Hajar. Heavy downpours triggered rapid flash flooding that swept through villages, overwhelming homes and infrastructures. Yemen's rainy season typically lasts from late March through mid-August, with the months of July and August seeing the most intense precipitation. And to make matters worse, Yemen is also gripped by one of the world's worst humanitarian crisis, with aid deliveries complicated by insecurity and logistical difficulties. Last month was the second hottest July globally on record, ending a 13-month streak of global record temperatures. This is based on the European Union's Copernicus Climate Change Service. Every month from June last year was consecutively ranked as the planet's warmest since records began in 1940, compared with the corresponding month in previous years. Copernicus said temperatures in July were 1.48 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial average, while the average temperature over the last 12 months were 1.64 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial era due to climate change, with July clocking the 2 hottest days on record. Copernicus largely attributed the high temperatures to greenhouse gas emissions from fossil fuel-based industries, and noted that oceans not normally impacted by El Nino saw an unusual rise in temperatures. In spite of the end of the record streak, ocean surface temperatures remained unusually high in many areas, and according to Copernicus, the end of this record streak did not, however, signal an end to the powerful effects of climate change. Chief Advisor of Bangladesh's interim government, Muhammad Yunus, arrived at Charles de Gaulle Airport to travel to Dhaka. Yunus, who was in Paris for a medical procedure, was named the chief advisor a day after Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina resigned and fled the country following a violent crackdown on a student-led uprising. The Nobel Peace Prize laureate was appointed to the post by Bangladesh President Muhammad Shahabuddin after he held meetings with student leaders and chiefs of the 3 military services. Yunus and his Grameen Bank, a microcredit organization, won the 2006 Nobel Peace Prize for work to lift millions out of poverty by granting small loans of under $100 to the rural poor of Bangladesh. And meanwhile, Bangladesh's newly appointed police chief has offered an apology for the conduct of officers during deadly protests and vowed an impartial probe into the killings. Inspector General of Police Mat Mainul Islam said the police are committed to conduct a fair and impartial investigation into every recent killing of students, common people and the police. A day after he was appointed following the ouster of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, he said in the current protests, the previous responsible officials were not able to fulfill their duties as per the expectations of the countrymen. He also said he had asked police units to end their strike and return to duty. More than 400 people were killed during weeks of clashes between protesters and security forces before ex-Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina quit on Monday. Among the 44 bodies brought to Dhaka Medical College Hospital on Monday, the deadliest day since unrest began in early July. Many of them were of young men and almost all had bullet wounds. Since Hasina fled the country, police reported mobs launching revenge attacks on her allies as well as on police stations and offices. Police unions said their members had gone on strike until the security of officers is assured. On a related note, garment factories in Bangladesh forecast to account for 90% of the country's exports reopened, hoping to swiftly resume full operations after production was disrupted by violent protests that ousted Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Garment and textile factories, which supply major Western brands such as H&M, Zara and Carrefour, had been forced to shut under curfews imposed during the unrest. At a factory belonging to apparel maker Umi Garments in Dhaka, the mainly female employees were back operating sewing machines. Factory manager M. Dadul Haq said the factory had lost 228,000 pieces of production worth $107,000. And in all, Umi Garments had lost about $2.2 million across 3 units. According to the World Trade Organization, Bangladesh was the third largest exporter of clothing in the world last year after China and the European Union. Over to the UK, thousands of anti-racism protesters took to the streets in several English cities to oppose days of far-right violence that have UK police on high alert. Nightly riots during which mosques and migrant targets have been attacked have erupted across towns and cities in England and Northern Ireland since 3 children were murdered on 29 July. Thousands of riot police were steeling themselves for dozens of demonstrations linked to the disorder, with immigration lawyers and buildings hosting asylum seekers set to be primary targets. But it was anti-fascist activists who were out in greater numbers, holding rallies in cities up and down England, including London, Birmingham, Bristol and Liverpool, as well as Newcastle. The government put 6,000 specialist police on standby to deal with the approximately 100 demonstrations by far-right activists and counter-protesters that were advertised. Courts have also started to order jail terms for offenders as authorities seek to head off new troubles. The disorder, Britain's worst since the 2011 London riots, has seen almost 430 people arrested and at least 120 charged, and led several countries to issue travel warnings for the UK. And elsewhere, tens of thousands of Argentine social organizations and left-wing groups marched through Buenos Aires, rallying against President Javier Milei's administration's austerity measures. Unemployment organizations and left-wing groups led a protest that began in a church in the west of the Argentine capital. Protesters made a pilgrimage annually to ask for employment in the sanctuary of St. Cajetan to culminate in Plaza de Mayo in front of the government house. Demonstrators voiced their discontent over Milei's fiscal policies, which they claimed have worsened the ongoing financial crisis. The rallies highlighted rising social unrest and the urgent call for government intervention to alleviate many Argentines' economic struggles. President Milei, a libertarian, has introduced austerity measures in a bid to curb rampant inflation. These measures include significant cuts to state spending, reduction of subsidies, and downsizing of the public sector. The Vienna leg of a tour by American megastar Taylor Swift has been cancelled after Austria arrested a Daesh sympathizer in connection with an attack plot. Authorities had earlier confirmed the arrest of a 19-year-old sympathizer of the armed group for allegedly planning an attack in the Vienna region, warning he had a focus on Swift's 3 upcoming shows. The organizers said that all ticket holders would receive refunds. About 65,000 spectators were expected at each show scheduled for today, tomorrow and Saturday. Austria's top security chief, Franz Rolf, said the man who had pledged his allegiance to Daesh in recent weeks was detained in Lower Austria about an hour from the capital. He also said that chemical substances had been seized at the suspect's home. A second person believed to have been in contact with the suspect was also arrested in Vienna. The 34-year-old pop star was due to bring her record-breaking Eras tour, which began its European leg in Paris in May, to Vienna today. Following France, the tour stopped in Sweden, Portugal, Spain, the United Kingdom, Ireland, the Netherlands, Switzerland, Italy, Germany and Poland, having a significant impact on the local economies at each stop. And that wraps up World Today. And in our top story, Islamic bloc holds Israel responsible for Hamas leader's death. And tune in to Malaysia Tonight, coming up at 8:30 p.m. on TV1 and saluran Berita RTM. Malaysia Madani, Jiwa Merdeka. I'm Renee Fong. Thank you for watching and have a pleasant afternoon.